Well, welcome everyone to the Project Business Foundation's second open hour. My name is Martin Bernenberg, and I'm the co-founder and CEO, and I'm here today with Oliver Lehmann, the president of our organization, and Stanimir Sodirov, our head of projects. Hello, Oliver. Hello, Stan.
Hey, Martin.
Good to have you both here. Well, we seem to have had little time for a breather following Friday's extraordinary event. I can see that quite a few of you actually participated. Well, we had a chat with Sunil Prashara, CEO of the Project Management Institute, and it was an outstanding and interesting conversation, which we will post online following today's event via LinkedIn. When we started the Open Hour series a few weeks ago, we received overwhelmingly positive feedback, letting us know that we are asking the right questions and addressing the right concerns. So we decided to start a poll on LinkedIn in preparation for today's follow-up event to decide what we should single out to talk about. Quite a number of people participated, ultimately voting for the topic of education in project business. This suits us quite well because neither of us are aware of any dedicated training in this specialized field of project management, let alone studied it formally. We are very quickly in the middle of a conversation now about our individual backgrounds and little anecdotes in connection with our on-the-job learning experiences. So it seems natural to widen the conversation to our Project Business Foundation community and listen to your thoughts and stories, because the only way to learn project business management so far has been through trial and error. And as the saying goes, trial is expensive and error even more so. Oliver, can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, project business management. It is not new at all. I had some discussions, meanwhile, with archaeologists, where this was already used when they built the pyramids, and actually no one knows, yeah. But it must have been something similar already existing there. So it's not a new thing. It has existed over centuries, probably millennia. And when we look at it, where we stand with that today, I think it's the only business discipline where we don't have experts, where we don't have education, where we don't have trainers, academia. Nothing is there. If we look at our kind of business that is keeping so many people occupied, meanwhile, not much literature is there, and nothing actually. I talked about this with people from associations, PMI, IPMA, 2-3 years ago, and said there is an aspect in project business that is at the moment still not addressed, and people have problems. People don't know how to do it, so they learn, as Martin correctly said, by trial and error, and trial is expensive, error even more. Shouldn't we help these people to better understand what they do? There was not much feedback coming back, not much interest in that, because the focus of both organizations is in a completely different direction. It's the direction of internal projects and organizational change and all these things. On Friday, I think Sunil has told us that it's true, and this is really the focus of these organizations. So the idea was to develop something new, and at the very, very beginning of our activity stands education. The most important thing is to find ways to help people in project business management do their job. And project business management includes, of course, project management, but it includes much, much more. It also includes legal issues. We had a lot of discussions in the last couple of weeks on legal questions. I remember, Martin, when was it, yesterday? The day before yesterday? You said,
Yep.
Hey, what are you talking about? I learned this as a young man. Yeah.
Yep.
For him, it was a standard topic. For others, it is a very specific thing because they still lack the education for that. So this was one point that we were interested in. To get people into legal questions, then we have the commercial questions, and there is another aspect. The aspect is project business does not begin with project management, does not begin with the project charter. In our understanding as project managers and as educators and experts in this field, project management begins with the project charter, chapter 4.1, as you all will probably know in the PMBOK guide, 6th edition. Project business starts much, much earlier. It begins with the make or buy decision on customer side, when a customer chooses the option not to make something, but to buy something. That's the real moment when project business begins. So the whole business development phase for both sides, customer and contractors, are also part of that, something we completely ignore at PMI. By the way, for this side, there is another association out there. It's called the APMP, Association for Proposal Management Professionals. They ignore the delivery side. So what we have at the moment is a situation where project business is like an old style over-the-fence project. We have the business development people on both sides, customers and contractors, and we have the people who have to take care of delivery, and there is not much communications between them. The larger the organization, the less communications you will find between them. And often project managers are not the people who deliver their project. I see them rather as the people who have to pick up and collect the poop when the parade of elephants has passed by. They stand there and pick up, you know what, of these elephants. We are more these guys, but project business management includes both sides. So there are new topics for us. There's a new view on projects, particularly on project business. And again, it is for both sides, for customer side, contractor side, and if you like, a third one, and that's our topic for today, that's the expert side. Martin.
Yep. Yep, that's definitely the starting point for today. And like I said, this whole discussion developed out of the realization that neither of us had formal education in this field, and we all learned by trial and error. So the idea is, can we start a conversation? Can we get your experiences and your stories to draw from and think about what needs to be developed to give people starting into this field the background and the information that they are looking for, as well as the extension of knowledge and skills that professionals in the field are looking for to expand their knowledge. So having said that, I hope that one of you will take the baton and start with their question or their background and their anecdote.
Yeah. The idea it's about you more than about us. Anyone?
Yeah, I'll step up. I wasn't back in the pyramids like Oliver was when those were done, but I go back a little bit into the history. Let me tell you a little bit about a $300 million a year project that we were running to dispose of high-level radioactive waste from nuclear reactors. All the storage on site has been filled up. We're looking for a geologic setting that can contain for the half-life of that radioactivity. And we assessed 5 different sites. It was a pretty straightforward project. It wasn't anything that complex about the project. We had a very clear start. We had a very clear end. But unfortunately, as we started to execute the project from the project management standpoint, I mean, everything was going fine. All of a sudden, environmental issues popped up, and all of a sudden, legal issues popped up that completely stopped the project. Now, we ran this project for over 5 years. We were on it for over 5 years. It's still not completed. This is about 20 years later now. It's still not completed. That's why you're seeing nuclear reactors being shut down, because they don't have any place to store the high-level radioactive waste they produce. So even though it was a straightforward geologic dig a hole, bury some stuff in it, we overlooked the environmental implications, the backlash from the public in terms of burying that in their backyard. And so essentially the project went really well, but it failed.
How were the interfaces between customers, contractors, maybe subcontractors, subcontractors, and so on? How were they part of this problem?
Yeah, they were. We created an interface document that showed all the interface relationships between all the parties, including the public. We did some work with the public in terms of the risks and exposure associated with the radiation, but mostly people were focused on the traditional project management, deliver a product so that it goes to the next delivery, and so on, and they looked the other way when it came to the environmental and legal issues.
Would it have helped to have more education for the people involved in project business matters? Business meaning focus on the interfaces between the organizations.
I think it would have. Of course, I may have been biased, but I just thought we had a bunch of stupid people because all that made sense to me. I mean, that's to me, from the business perspective, all of those issues need to be covered as an integral part of the project. But it was hard to get those people to convince because they thought myopically focusing on just their piece of the project. And I think that's where the mistakes were made.
Martin?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just responding to Akbar, who gave or posted something in the Q&A in the chat function, and he said that he was helping a company on their make or buy decisions. I assume that there is something to learn from, and Akbar, do you want to tell us about that?
Yes, thanks, Martin. It's just a simple consulting session that I have with them. They were having some issues with their initiatives, and it's not clear for them whether they should. It's sort of like a make or buy decision. But in terms of that consulting session reminds me about this could be a starting point to, if we're going to have an educations about project business management, this make or buy decision could be the starting point to learn about the project business. So that's probably what I can share right now. Thanks, Martin.
So we are seeing really a lot of things interesting, and also I put some notes here. So one of the things now, if Akbar is able to help a new company with a make or buy decision, this means that the company is trusting him. So maybe the basis, the foundation for the project business is, first of all, have trust, collaboration with the other. Okay. Otherwise, we are not going anywhere because they will never accept. So I think very, very first thing is probably to build the foundation, which is the trust and being credible. Okay. Then if we have this, probably we open a door. Not necessarily we arrive at the 7th floor, but at least we are in the hall. Okay. So that's the very first thing, probably. So if we ever have to say, what is the very first thing to do? Okay, build first your good relationship with the customer and make sure that you are trusted. The second thing is, I wanted to say really a lot of things, and probably I will miss some. So Oliver was saying before, we have to start from the very beginning, probably even earlier than the project charter. And this is totally true because, by the way, we sometimes have what I'm seeing in these days is that, at least in my company, we have a sales department. There is an RFP. Yay, we go. And then we win the RFP, we have the contract, and then they go to delivery and say, okay, now do it. And yeah, we lost this. So probably that's another thing. So maybe the contract must be done not by the salespeople, but by the delivery people. Now, I'm finding this now, but because before I was working for a global account, and the thing was totally different. We had some trouble time, but at the end, although I was, let's say, delivery, but I was also doing project. Okay, I was doing project management, but also overseeing the operation. So when I had to respond to the need of the customer and say, I need this, or maybe even I could anticipate, okay, because I was the one who was responsible for doing this, and saying, okay, why don't we do this? Why don't we change this? And I could also, so maybe rather than having these, I don't know, these salespeople saying, yeah, we send the parachute and then we do the things with the majorette, etc. Maybe it's the delivery people who really has to do who can really give the right idea, and I mean, what is possible.
Yeah,
Okay.
but that's a really good point. Yeah.
Hi. Okay. So education is about knowledge, and they say knowledge is power. Most time, people in project business, there are a lot of interdependencies. There are a lot of interfaces. There is the client, there is the contractor, maybe there is the funder if you have an external funder. So a lot is involved. I think the challenge is most of us coming from PMI, we have this mindset that the project starts from charter. I think that's where the reorientation needs to happen. We need to be able to have everybody take a step back. There's what we call enterprise analysis. And this is what, again, I'm not promoting any organization, but IB, in terms of business analysis, actually takes a look at this. A lot of things happen in the background before we get to signing the charter. I think that's the value in terms of education that project business, this organization, will truly help throw more lights on. Because before the charter, part of enterprise analysis, whether you call it strategic initiative or whatever you call it, that is where you make that from an enterprise level, you make that make or buy decision. What capability do we have in this organization? What can we do? What do we need to outsource? Who is the vendor? The whole of those conversations. And I think if we can truly get all the key players together and educate them, and everybody is on the same page, even before we get to the charter, there will be less conflict. There will be less issues. We will run into fewer problems than we are running into right now. Because people jump in from charter, some people don't understand the background, what happened before the charter was signed. People come with different expectations. Two people cannot work together except they agree. So if your expectation as a vendor is different from my expectation as a client, is different from the expectation of the funder, we will lock head, we will run into problems down the road. So I think it's a huge opportunity for education to look at what happened before the charter is signed. What in pinball is a black box. Nobody talks about that. But we need to shine some light into that. What happens before charter? Who are the key players? What form of education? What form of knowledge transfer do we need before we even get into the charter approval, which is authorization?
Dave, I'd like to pick up on that. There are two big areas of project business missing in the PMBOK guide, even if we, for the moment, ignore this business development part, which is also part of our activity. But even if we ignore this, we still have two areas that are left out. One area is the project manager in the customer project. Some say customer-facing project. I prefer just customer project. That's missing. This person is missing in the PMBOK guide. This kind of project manager, this form of project manager, turns up at short instances in the PMBOK guide. And actually, it was me to bring it in when I did the review of the PMBOK guide. It wasn't there originally. Yeah? Otherwise, then it wouldn't be mentioned at all. So this person is missing, or sometimes this team, if you have a team working for the customer, this is missing. The other side that is missing is the PMBOK guide understands the purchasing or the procurement process as something. I remember it from the past. I come from automotive industry originally. 30 years ago, we had a term called the extended workbench. Extended workbench meant a company like BMW or Mercedes or whoever it is does all the work in the own premises, inside the own factory, with some exceptions that is handed out. So you have an internal workbench, and here and there you give something out, you buy something instead of making it by yourself from whatever reason. By that time, in automotive industry, if you purchase something, instead of making it by yourself, you had to give an explanation for that. There was a justification needed to do it that way. Now, today in automotive industry, it goes the other way around. If you say, let's do this by ourselves, let's make it and not buy it, now these people need to come up with an explanation, with a justification. Why are we loading this burden on our own organization if someone else could do this for us? So this turned around completely. This was a process over, I would say, 20 years roughly, and this was over about 10 years ago. It's now standing. So there is supply chain management, they have research, they have literature, they have certifications, they have seminars, they have software, they have special software for that. All the things we don't have. I see precisely the same process in project management at the moment. The move from an extended workbench, as you see it in the PMBOK guide, to a complex network system where a project has contractors, and the contractors have subcontractors, and maybe subcontractors, plus consultants, plus trainers, plus other people who work for that. And we have a similar complex situation. We don't have the training, we don't have the literature, we don't have the research, we don't have academia, we cannot study it. Nothing is there. So my question is, how can we bring this into our industry that we get the same degree of professionalism that the automotive people, or generally manufacturing people, today have? BMW is not far from me. It's 10 minutes with a bicycle. Their supply chain managers have a very clear understanding what will our third-tier suppliers, third-tier supplier is the contractor of the contractor of the contractor. What will they do next September, 15th of September, around lunchtime? And when will this work be finished? When will they send it to their customer? They will send it to their customer. And finally, it will arrive here. When will it arrive here at BMW? In what amounts, in what numbers, in what quality, all these things. They know that. We have no idea about that. If project managers have supply networks, they have no idea what is happening in them. Very often, they don't even know who is part of this supply network. They don't know who is all part of my project. They have people, organizations that they don't know working in their project. How can we do that? This is not professional. So we have two sides, and both sides are missing in the PMBOK guide, and that's where we start. And the third side is, of course, to bring in the process of business development. What can we do? What can we do to move this forward as individuals, as Project Business Foundation, and anything else?
Yeah, it's okay. Just I would like to comment about the recent thoughtful from Oliver. Actually, speaking about the trial and errors related to the projects, then we have to look to the phases actually, which is like procurement and engineering. Most of conflicts it's going on in these main areas during the project execution. So I don't know why we cannot prepare these procurement and let's say the engineering ahead. Then the conflicts will be lesser during the construction, and then we can move forward to execute without any penalties. The problem, the conflict happened in the management that the client has no room for variation. The consultant want to prove that the design is perfect, while the contractor is stuck to prepare the shop drawing during the execution, which may happen like trial and error and repetitive work, which is at the end will affect that critical path or the milestone of the project. This is just my thoughts. I don't know if it can help. Thank you.
I think it's very interesting to see that most everyone agrees that the make or buy decision is a really strong starting point for the overall conversation. It's basically where it's decided, obviously, whether the project that is supposed to happen and is to be conducted will be handled internally or via an external partner. Now, that can be in a setting where, from the very get-go, on the highest level of the organization, it is being decided that one enters into a partnership of two companies. That would be on a very high level, or if we're going on entering this on a much lower level, where we're just buying parts for just a part of the project. So it seems like this is really something that we have to focus on if we're looking at how we're going to try to educate people when they enter this field. I remember it was definitely the same as what Akbar said. The first time I was confronted with a make or buy decision, that was me entering in the world of project business management, even though I had done projects quite a few years for quite a few years. So yes, that's a good start. And from there, you automatically enter into a conversation about how contracts are drawn up, etc. That is definitely the case. How did you guys end up with your first project that was a cross-corporate project? I assuming that most of you actually did start running projects that were handled internal to the organization. What were the key stories, key anecdotes when you were confronted with actually operating in a cross-corporate environment?
Can I jump in a little bit of whatever I just like to say? Actually, the make or buy, which has been discussing in this forum, I fully agree. But my experiences of working with MNC for a long time, I have seen that knowledge of business case is very important, not only for the management, also for the project managers. Because many of the time, they only understand the gross margin. And project manager only understand gross margin. But how the business case is developed and how it is actually helping the business to grow. Many of the time, management team also not aware of it, and neither the project manager are aware of it. And this is an area where I think we can help this management team and also the project managers to develop the competency and the skills. Because I have worked in Philips almost plus 27 years, and then last 5-7 years I was developing some project managers in Vietnam in a Danish company. This is one of the challenge. Everybody is basically management asks business case question, even without knowing that whether this question is really relevant. At the same time, project manager also does not know how to answer it. So this is a gap of knowledge. It's my personal, even business case definition, but in my opinion, it's not experience. And PMI is not good enough. It may be much more knowledge is required of the project managers and also the people who are managing the governance.
That's
from my side.
May I ask you a question? There are at least two business cases in project business.
Sure.
The business case of the customer and the business case of the contractor. And while we try to harmonize them, they are fundamentally different business cases. Yeah. So which one do you mean?
I think the customer side is more important because ultimately, end of the day, the customer will basically pay us. So that business case, in my view, is more important than the other one. And that's my view, personal view.
Does someone disagree with that?
No, it's not that it's a disagreement. After all, they are linked. So if I have a business case, if I have a project with a client and they are going to pay us, okay, I need to be clear about what I'm going to do. So because if I need to if I need to have, let's say, a business case with a contractor, I need to make sure that the two are talking the same thing, not that we are deviating. They must be on the same. I mean, are we talking about two business cases that are related to the same activity? So we are taking a project, for example, and we are asking a contractor to deliver a piece of it, right? So I think that he is right in the sense that I need to give priority to the one of the client, because I need to, not only because I'm going to get paid, but also because I need to be clear about what I have to do and make sure that the contractor is going to do exactly what they are expecting. I think at the very beginning, I did not start with internal project. I immediately started with project with client. And at the very beginning, I have to say the biggest challenge I had was that the statement of work that I started as project manager, but execution. I did not write the first statement of work. I read the statement of work. I did not understand what was written there, because they are super nice language. They were super nice language, verbiage, okay, something like shocking. And after all, you say, what should I do? I don't understand. So at the end, we did with this client, we did a transformation, and we made we instructed the project managers this after years. So when I, let's say, increase my level of responsibility as project manager, but to make really the statement of work, to clarify what is written, what is it we are going to do, it in clear, not that someone has to interpret. And just to say in brackets, something that really happened, we lost an RFP with our client. The client preferred another partner, okay, for network transformation work, okay? And because they say they are cheaper, well, how come that you are so expensive? They are cheaper. At that time I was working with HP, Hewlett Packard, and this other partner was also a big name. Perfect, okay. Now, here, they found out too late that these people sold activities that were all from remote. They were just sitting on their desk. Of course, the client was global, okay, so they had to change the routers physically, okay, but they said, we are in our desk, so how can, we are not at your location, so you, client, has to move the router, and the router is not the one like we have at home. It's a huge one, it's heavy, and the client said, really? That's why they were cheaper. That's why they were cheaper. They put on project managers, but in the statement of work, it was not clear enough, apparently. So, again, I think it's a little bit difficult for me to put together a summary of everything that we are seeing, because I think I'm hearing a lot of nice things, but I'm coming to a point that says, yeah, thinking back, we also made extra effort to make sure that what we are writing with the client is clear enough. It doesn't matter if at the end we are using cool words or strategy or whatever. It's just direct, clear, transparent, etc. So that we take this and we go to our contractor. Okay, we want this. Are you able to do this?
A question to all. We see the troubles between contractors and customers. And I think one reason is at the beginning of the process, the major parts of I wouldn't call it business case, I would call it business interests of customers and contractors are to a major degree different. It's a hard job to harmonize them. But in order to do that, we need people who understand the challenge. We need people who know the methods and the tools and techniques and the basic understanding, approach, all these things, to really do that and to achieve that. And now my question to you is, what can we do to help the practitioners who help the people in the field to develop this knowledge and to develop these skills and learn the tools and techniques and all these things that we need there. What is your experience, or what is your expectation on us here? How we can improve the situation?
We suffered with client a lot, and then we made internal transformation project, and one of most is how to talk with the customer, how to someone wrote something about design thinking in the chat. Design thinking is something that today it's associated with agile, but in reality can be at least the first part can be associated to anything, because when you talk about empathy, I mean, ideally you should empathize always with the customer to understand and maybe prevent, not prevent, anticipate what he thinks. So we did a lot of this thing. It was a project that, if I'm not wrong, it lasted 6 months, internal project, to help the project managers to go back on the right track when talking with the customer and understanding the need. So to put together the thing. And we had specific, as you rightly mentioned, Oliver, before, we need a person, and we had a person who really was in charge of managing the client on this perspective, not only on the operation, but also on everything that was project. So he was a delivery person, if you will, okay? So he could understand the operation, but he could also understand and propose something to the customer, not a salesperson, because salespeople were more looking for, you sell. He was really into proposing something from a delivery standpoint. And you are totally right, Oliver. I think this is really something that is missing in the PMBOK or in general.
You're making very good points. I find it very interesting that the conversation is somewhat drifting towards design thinking, and reading through the different posts in our chat. That's an interesting development in my eyes. I'm truly a design thinker. My background is in innovation management. And I know, for instance, Stanimir is very interested in that area. We have Jörg here, and Salvador was the first one, I think, who posted this to the chat. Salvador, do you want to explain a bit more as to how you think design thinking and project business management could be a nice match together in bringing education forward in our field?
Hello, Martin. Thank you.
Hey.
Yeah, so I was recalling on Oliver's experience, because I also work in the automotive industry, and of course this applies to all the industries, but the automotive industry is specifically or especially demanding, and people internally and externally want results right away. And this urgency, my experience, I was a lean manufacturing engineer in this company, and I was trained as innovation coach. I participated in the development of different innovative projects for the company. And one of the first things that I learned was to understand very well the customer from the very beginning. So when I was listening to Lee's case and to the explanation of Oliver about what PBM is, it was for me a clear example of many people not making the right questions to the customer at the beginning, because we assume when we want to do something that we already understand what's the path that we want to take, and we assume that our customer is going to like it. But in reality, we need to hear from the customer what is the real need. I also have another concept. I learned another concept called jobs, pains, and gains. And through an interview, you understand what are the jobs, pains, and gains of the customer. and then you already have a sketch of the right questions. It obviously takes a little bit of brainstorming, a little bit of team backing with the core team that will develop the project, and then you make the questions to the customer, and maybe new questions come into play. But another very important part is to understand that communication with the customer is continuous. Like, yeah, it will give us a start point from where to begin, but we need to reiterate every time we advance into the project. Actually, as part of my job, I was part of the core team that needed to start 4 new production lines for General Motors from scratch. I was selected for this team since the very beginning when the plant was completely empty. And it was something that, even though we thought that we were making the right questions, we realized that we were lacking some spectrum in our plan, and then we needed to change things again. So it was a very, very, very rich experience for me. And I think it sounds easy to say that we have to find the right questions, but it's not something easy. It requires a lot of iteration and a lot of team backing with your peers. So
that's a very interesting point. Basically, you are addressing agile components in a cross-corporate project.
Exactly. I think both. Yeah, I think project management, PDM, can merge very well with the design thinking structure. Could be merged. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have one question to Salvador. If you say, isn't it a specific point of view of agile projects, of agile methods, or of agile methodologies to get the customer's voice early in the project stage? Isn't that specifically and typically for agile? So my question is, you are doing also agile to get the customer on board, don't you? So we are moving a little bit away from the original point of the project business foundation, which is even missing contractual things and contractor parts of you, because agile is really dealing with the customer voice and really dealing with getting a fast product done to get the customer voice early in the stage. So I think this is not the point there, or is it? I don't know.
The question is whether the contractual part would be considered into the voice of the customer stage in design thinking.
Actually, I have a point, like in the earlier discussion with the contractors and the subcontractors. Actually, we have a main contract with the customers and handling subcontractors of different parties. As project progresses, it's very these key decisions of selecting of subcontractors or sub-vendors should be taken at the initial stage of the project, and it involves like all selection criteria like engineering capabilities, schedule, cost, quality, and the financial capabilities of the sub-vendors. So like it's a risk we are carrying forward along with the project. It's not one sub-vendor, like in the project we handle like multiple sub-vendors, and as you said, like it's a challenging task to connect the customer contract with the subcontractors contract as well, like business case. Like so, like we need to, the challenge is to align the customer requirements to the subcontractors. So because like we have to translate the things, and after giving the order to the subcontractors, the monitoring is also a key role. Like as a project also progresses, the meanwhile the vendor or the subcontractors progress also progresses. So like we need to align and to reduce the gap between the customer requirement as well as our contractual requirement with the subcontractors. And the main key is to have the connectivity between the different subcontractors aligned with the main contract to the customer. So that gap has to be closed, and the feedback from the customer to the vendors or the subcontracts has to be mutually shared and everyone has to be in the same platform, and the end results can be attained much fruitfully as the project progresses. This is my point with the customer and the difference of contractor case.
We are talking about one aspect of project business management at the moment, and that's the project management aspect. We have two more aspects from a contractor side, and one of them is the question, how do we earn money with that project? Because otherwise we will not survive. It's not greed, it's need. It's the need for an organization to survive. And if you look on the customer side, there are other questions coming in. It's about vendor reliability, vendor agility, of course, and bringing all the individual interests under one roof so that we all want the same. It's what NASA has called mission success first. And there's even another thing where we have the question of education. Let me show you something of last Friday. We asked people in a little poll. Sorry, it's the wrong. Yeah, that's the right image now. We asked people, where do you stand in project business? The attendees of this session last Friday with Sunil Prashara, we had 580, I think, registered attendees. And some said in project business management, I stand on customer side, some on contractor side, some sandwiched between customers and contractors. And only 4% said, I have nothing to do with project business. So our audience, 96%, were in project business. And the largest group is in a even more difficult situation, because they are at the same time the contractor to a customer and the customer of subcontractors. So I think that's also something we have to look at. We have to look at all three sides here. Actually, the sandwich guys, those in the third column, they have the same problems as the other two together. They are customer and they are contractor. And the problem now is not so much the internal question. How do we get the needs of users, functional department, whatever it is? How do we get these needs to developers, for instance, and to a project team? How do we get it transported over the borders of the organization into another organization, which may have to pass it on? And then the other question, of course, is on the way back, we have a flow of money, and this flow of money is necessary to pay for the resources used in the project and make it attractive for the contractor to work. So I think we have to discuss much more than the questions that we have in internal projects. I'll close this again. So
I think what you're saying there really adds to what Chris Schiebel just wrote earlier in the chat, and that is that we're dealing with a very high level of complexity. Chris, can I get you to speak up about what you just posted in the chat earlier?
Yeah, sure thing. I hope my echo, the voice is easy to get on your end. What I was pointing out from my experience in working in project business management projects is that I was forced to nearly understand every department's individual needs and concerns and how they are working with, may it be suppliers, may it be logistic partners or subcontractors. It starts with NDAs I had to review. It went on with discussions around the P&L with finance, and goes all the way to HR and recruiting new project managers for our project organization. So I was wondering, with all those skills from almost, let's say, every department that is around in your company, what kind of skilled master will you turn in eventually, and will you then qualify for the CEO or VP's right hand then? So what's the, I think project manager would be too less of a title to name the skills and point out the skills that you eventually end up with as a project business manager.
Yes, I think that is certainly a good question. Obviously, there is much more needed in terms of business acumen, come it down to contract management and the like, that previously isn't that much of a big issue for a project manager working on internal projects. So I guess that's a very good question. The question for us now is more along the lines of what needs to be prioritized as something that would be an entry point for education in the field of project management. When you address where that leads you later on in your career, you're probably right. Adding more business acumen into what we all kind of understand as the background of for instance, a PMP certified project manager, then yeah, that gets you much closer to actually the ins and outs of running the business, being it on either side of the cross-corporate project. But in terms of how to make this knowledge available and how to address education in that field, do you see from the list of things that you actually had in your post in the chat, do you see like incremental steps as to what is the most pressing and what can be left to a more advanced later stage in your education? Can you say something towards that?
That's a very interesting, however difficult question. I guess all those things that are left and right to what you're already covering as a project manager. For instance, if you're used to looking at business cases, then you're probably fine with the P&L. But if you've never been into contracts or let's say private or company property like patents, that's probably extended or level 2 or level 3 knowledge, because it's just too far off from what hits your desk on a regular basis as a common project manager. So I guess it depends how close the relation is to what you're already covering, and then you can probably build some levels depending on the proximity compared to your current position and regular project management know-how. That's probably how I like to see it scaling. And the entry point would probably be my own motivation. Like, is there a perspective? Is there a greater future than just being a project manager if I enter into that new additional field?
What do the others think? Please do go ahead. I mean, basically, that's a very good question. It's not really on topic of what we're going to do about education, but in terms of how project business management acumen is actually something that helps in developing one's career based on what one already is as a project manager, for instance, in internal projects. I think that's a very good question because in my view, I truly believe that that is a nice piece of the puzzle to develop one's own career. That's for sure. And that being said, when we are talking in a community of project managers, that's obviously then something that poses the question as to how to build this knowledge. And that then leads us back to where we all started in the beginning of the open hour. So when we look at everything that needs to be covered to really make that extra step and develop the extra skills and knowledge, where do you see the first step? We already talked about that the first step is really addressing the make or buy decisions more and reflect more on that. What are other first step pieces of knowledge that you feel a project business manager should build and develop on top of what we assume a PMP to already know?
Martin, in addition to your words, I must agree with Akbar earlier in the chat. The beginning of this whole process, as he said, should be from the buyer side, make or buy decision, and from the contractor side, it's a contract and teaming agreements. This is also one part we need to touch in the future discussions, because contracts and teaming agreements, in my opinion, are very solid things from project business.
Agreed.
Let's say as partners, hey, how much it would be to do that, we should be able to understand what it is, so that at the end he can decide for the best. So it would be us. I personally think really being closer to the customer, that would be the thing that is the basis. Really, we project managers should not see themselves only like, okay, I got the statement of work, now I have to execute it. We said, I think correctly at the very beginning, they should be already part of the journey from the very, really from the sunrise, okay? And so we should be able to understand and propose for the best. So maybe if we want to call it empathy, as we were mentioning, design thinking, so empathy and defining the thing, I think that would be the one, and be able to say, you know, this is what now design thinking comes like agile, okay, because it's iterative, but at the end the core is that. Now we are not, if we are going to do a waterfall project, we are not going to prototype, but still we need to understand what the customer really wants, so we make sure that we are offering him the best, not the parachute, but really what he really needs, and pay for that, not that he has to pay for even something that he does not need, so that we can, in that way, we build also credibility. We are not trying to take his blood, but we are really giving him the solution. So if there is one thing that to start with, I would go with the understanding and the customer and listening to the customer and really catching what he wants, so that I can be really partner.
I think, Vivian, this brings me to another point, and also want to address to Oliver. Before making or buy decision, there is making an offer from a contractor side. Before the company is making actual buy or make decision. In order to make some decision, you need to have an offer.
Yeah, it's part of the picture of project business. I'd like to show you something more. We are slowly coming to the end, but I think that's an important one. That's a survey done 3.5 years ago. We should repeat this maybe, about trends in make or buy decisions. We hear a lot about project management, a future skill, and more people go into project management. The question is, where are they really expected? Is it more in the internal world, where internal teams do internal projects, or is it in project business, where we have a contractor side and a customer side, and they do business together? And the green bars you see here was responses that people said on a scale from -3 to +3, what their experience was. And on the scale, you see more green on the right-hand side. That's right-hand side is the choose buy side. So there was a tendency that people told me, an experienced tendency towards buying more. Some had more made in their own house, but many more were on the buy side. So the overall tendency they saw in the recent experience was towards buy. And the same thing is true for the future expectation towards buy. The expectation was a bit less than the experience, but it was still more on the right-hand side. So what we see here is a trend from, I call it cross-functional projects, that's the left-hand side, to cross-corporate projects, and that's on the right-hand side. That's a trend we are in. The problem is project managers on both sides are not sufficiently prepared for that. So what can we do to prepare them better? Do we need something like a, say, Project Business Academy or something like that? What is it?
What is it?
Yeah, I'm also interested after post-COVID world, how this looks like in this reality now.
I'm a trainer. I see business here. I see a lot of
skills.
People are uneducated. People have huge challenges. No one is there to help them. Some of you may be consultants. That's consultant business. Some of you write books. I know, Chris Schiebel, you told me you work on a book. That's a different book, I know. But if you're writing books, that's a book market. There's one book out on the market at the moment on the topic that you can buy. Yeah, that's a huge market. What we need to do is to use it. I see it as business, but the other thing is there are people out there who need help on both sides. Steve, you're a trainer. What's your opinion? Steve Kistner.
Well, as a trainer, just give myself a little bit of background. I work in the aviation industry, and actually, most of what we do is contracted type of work, some type of customer. Yeah, we have our own internal development type of work in our commercial products, but both in our government type of work and even in our commercial work, when we have customers come to want specialized type of aircraft. A lot of what I do is to build up, do program planning, and that's primarily what I teach them. The teaching that I do is internal to the company. It is a lot of what I do is to teach people that are maybe engineering team leads or people that are even support groups, financial type of groups, and so forth, or procurement type of groups, and teach them how all this all works together and how we integrate our projects to whatever it's a customer type of goal as to what it is. And so it is understanding what those type of things are to begin with. The type of project teams that we have when we go out capture business, we'll have maybe again, I'm working in the program PMO type of organization, but we have contracts folks that all will be joined together with on that. That's really kind of the informal type of learning that I do right now, and I try to teach to my own staff is to understand more what the contracts people do. What I did before this morning was we're looking at an RFI for a particular customer that's been going on for quite some time. Looking at RFI, just kind of how we're communicating with that customer, think we got everything all straight, and just all the pieces of coordination between that customer. Don't know if that quite answers the question, but anyway, but what I do as a trainer side, I teach a lot of how we build up program plans, and both for really pretty much external, be it for a United States government or for other governments from other customers from all around the globe. I hope that answers the question a little bit. I don't know.
So in some organizations, we have internal trainers who understand the topic and who are very professional, who can build on the existing experience inside the organization. But now we are in a business where we have to extend on top of that, because first of all, the business is growing. So we bring new people in. Someone has to teach these people and to train these people. And new companies come in and new business relationships are starting it. So we have to help people in this growing market, I would say strongly growing market, to cope with the challenges. And we are not out there. Who is trainer here? Just raise your hands. Who is trainer here?
Well, hello. You can't see me because my camera is off, but my name is Mohammed Nasri.
Well, we can hear you.
But you can hear me. Well,
yes.
I've worked in project management during my 15 years of experience, but during the last 7 years, I've worked as a trainer and a consultant. So the practical experience is definitely an asset to use when training people. Yet, from my experience during the 7 years, people with PMP certificates and people who has already attended a course for project management are still looking for commercial and contractual and legal aspects. And some of them even needs a consultant to help them like once a week or on-job training during one project to implement and modify their experience theoretically to practical work, maybe through templates, through on-job make or buy decision exercise so that they can scale it up to their business. So from my experience, the need is there. And I agree with Oliver that consultants and articles or papers or even books would be a good idea for people to grab this experience, because otherwise they will still do it through trial and error.
Absolutely spot on.
I would like to ask Antje, as a trainer, what is her opinion?
Sure, thanks for asking. So when I teach project managers, and this topic comes up, and it does every time, and we talk about contracting, we talk about the challenges that comes from working for either a customer or contractor organization, or in some cases even both at the same time, then there's always more questions than answers that we can find often in the content of the training as it was designed, be it certification preparation in project management, be it hands-on workshops for maybe product owners in agile teams or such. The questions are always the same that the people have, and they work in those projects and they have need. They want to understand contracting better. They want to understand how to manage customer relationships better. They want to understand all the other aspects of project business management that were brought up today. And so I know from them, every day they tell me more or less, or every week at least, almost, that they have this need. And when I tell them that there's a foundation for this, they're often really happy to find out. And some of them look into it further and join even, because it's their situation. I have a university class right now who are a lot in construction, and they work in customer projects. And so for them, it's extremely relevant to understand the dynamics here of the business better, profitability, liquidity, but also contract management. All these topics we just brought up, there's definitely a need, and it's definitely hard for people to wrap their heads around it because it is so complex. So it's also not easy to just give them simple answers in a seminar. It would be much better to have materials for them, to supply them with materials, training for them, an organization that helps them where they can network, all the ideas that the Project Business Foundation has. So I think it's great that this was started, and I love the discussions today, how this can be improved and even how it can be shaped, because we're still in the beginning of shaping all of this. And I think that some great stuff can be provided to practitioners, which is basically our mission, right?
So I think this is absolutely true. There is a bunch of skills that the project manager could learn. Okay. The point is that we talked about a book. At the end, very few people are so crazy that can buy a book and study it during the evening rather than watching a movie or staying with family, etc. At the end, what really people need is to be obliged, pass me this word, to study it. So if I decide to take the PMP, it's different if I have to take the book, read it on my own, or if I have to attend classes. So coming back to what's the name? Sorry, what Anjay said. I think that would be. I believe absolutely in training. I'm a trainer, but also I like to do trainings. I think something that is important also is that people will not learn these things in 2 hours or 1 day. They need really to practice. So possibly they would need more a workshop rather than training. Offer. And I do trainings, okay? Most of the time I do trainings, we can do exercises, we can do role plays, etc. But it's not the one role play that would help. If I would prepare workshop a lot so people practice, because the only way, you can't even listening, how can you practice? How can you teach? Okay, you really have to listen and practice. They have to try, they have to really try it before saying, I absorb it. So more than training, I would say, if I could, I would love to make workshops, because that would be not that you have the magic one, but at least it's closer to reality.
Agree.
Okay.
Absolutely correct.
And
Would it be
I agree
helpful?
because the trainer is the person who brings the knowledge. Otherwise, we will continue to learn from trial and errors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Would it be helpful if the Project Business Foundation puts a focus on providing training materials that you can use in sessions, that you can use with students, bring it into the organizations, bring it into public trainings, whatever it is? Would this be helpful to you?
We can also
Absolutely.
help with the material.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. I think, from what I understand, we have lots of trainers here. So at the end, we can probably also help with the material. So, but probably developing really exercises and try to keep the attention high. Okay, for some time, really keep them engaged. That would be something that we probably need to work as a team to make sure that what we have is really appealing.
Good. What would it be helpful to have something like a certification? Maybe not on the PMP level, which is very high, I think, but something on a Prince 2 level also, but something so that your training also has a deliverable. Certification preparation means training with a deliverable. Would this be helpful?
Well, commercially, from the business side, it depends on the number of people who will be certified. So definitely, we would like to have the certified people to be of a good value so that the perspective of the certified people are at the expected level. So definitely, the certificate is important, but to be selective and to be hard would be still not hard. I mean, to the point.
Okay.
Arif, can you unmute yourself and jump into this, what you said in the chat?
Hi, everyone. No, just it reminded me what Vivian was saying about these workshops. Around 3-4 years ago, at the place where I work, we tried to make the structure for project management training, and it used to be called for many years project management, level 1, level 2, and so on. And in 2016, we changed it into basically business management, and realizing that, the structure that was used about creating a charter and then going with the project management plan and so on, didn't really cover the business side of it, because at the end of the day, the project managers are going to be sitting in these reviews with the higher management to explain why we are not profitable or why we are not delivering the project which was promised by the ever optimistic sales team, right, to deliver these double-digit IBTs and so on. And I think that's the biggest difference, right? That's the biggest part of it. A PMP structure would not cover that much, right? And whenever you have appointed a project manager and then he starts to familiarize himself, he reads all the contracts between the company with the customer and the company with the contractors. There needs to be some kind of a guideline, right? This back-to-back clauses which must be there, and the knock for knocks. There are some contract principles that project managers who are managing business, they need to be equipped with. And if we only go with, let's say, with what's in the PM book, it doesn't really go that much into details, right? It does tell you that there is some format, there is a time and material, but really it doesn't really show you how important, these types of models are. Like if you have a lump sum turnkey project with a customer, and then you decide to go on a time and material with your contractor, then you are exposing yourself, right, to this risk. And that's the biggest difference when we launched this business management format. And I think, I think most of us here have already been into these situations where you scratch your head and wow, I mean, this business management is a completely different animal altogether, right? And that's just the contract and the profitability side of things. There are also the quality side and the safety aspects of the deliverables, and then closing it with the customer, and then increasing the scope, and all of that is different. But I think I agree with what Vivian is saying, in a way that every company is different. So if we were to go in to help a company in business management, then we cannot simply just cover everything in a training format, because the way companies manage the P&L is different. The way companies look at the contracting strategies are different, and they know best. So I think the approach should be, if we go into companies, it would be like a facilitate. There has to be a bigger facilitation role that the trainers do, right? Because we know the science of it, we know the knowledge, the body of it, but they know the limitations and the boundaries within specific their companies. So when we talk about, let's say, for example, P&L reviews, or even business forecasting, right? What's going to happen in the next quarter? So they already normally have their own way of forecasting business, and the role of the trainers or the education practitioners would be just to guide them and structure. This is what you should be looking at. These are the bullet points, and sometimes these bullet points. Sometimes companies don't have. I mean, I can certainly, testify for myself that when we had this business management training, it was very eye-opening, right? The fact that we were given different cases. Look, the trainer comes, right, with 2 contracts, for example, and then we were asked, look at this clause and see what is the weakness, where is the gap, and what would be your exposure. And then the next step would be, how would you fix it? How would you fix it if you were in the contract negotiation? And how would you fix it if you were, already born into this, the contract was already there? How would you be able to manage this? So that's what I have to add to this. Thank you.
Yeah. I agree with you that you have to know your business partner, and that's true for both sides. For the customer, should know the contractor, and the contractor should know the customer. Unfortunately, we don't have much time to get familiar with each other. We have a contract and we have to start work. I think Martin wants to do a wrap up, but before you do that, I would like to answer one question, because I think that's a core question here.
And I would like to add another point also here.
Oh, yes.
The valuable point. I'm working in a project-based company, because all the project managers considered as a profit centers. Okay. So as far as I'm concerned, the project manager has some accounting knowledge also, meaning in my finance manager is going to do some revenue recognition based on the project. So the project manager doesn't know what is revenue recognition, it's accounting terminology. For an instance, suppose if I finish some considerable amount of work, I'm going to bill to my customer, and I'm raising a milestone billing to my customer. Let us say the customer has to pay within 60 days credit or 90 days credit. So the fund has to come inside my book. Then only I can pay a salary to my people. Let us assume that I done some, the quality is not good, and the customer is asking, give me the credit note. Let us say I'm going to raise $30,000 for this milestone billing, because some portion I have completed in this project. And the customer is unhappy, and the customer is directly communicating to the accountant, could you please give me the credit note, because I cannot pay the 30,000 full amount. So I need a credit note against this. So the accountant is agreed to pay a credit note of $10,000, let us say. So this kind of things and all, the project manager is completely aware. As he said very clearly, that P&L is very, very the vital part of any project. So what is my gross margin, gross profit? What is my net profit? what are the indirect costs and all the accountant is adding into my project. Okay. So this kind of knowledge and all the project manager has to aware. As far as the PMBOK is concerned, this kind of information is not at all there. I appreciate the PMI, the methodology. However, it has been my personal observation. The project manager has to aware what is revenue recognition. The revenue recognition is based on what? Whether you're going to do the revenue recognition based on your quoted one, or your actual cost, or your the sale order value. So based on what type of revenue recognition the accountant is recognize the revenue. The recognition is nothing but my cost of goods sold minus my revenue. This month, how much profit I'm going to earn against this project. So these things and all, the project manager has to aware. So what is my opinion is the project manager has to, see with the accountants or the project finance professional to gain the cross-functional knowledge also. So this is really vital, because as a project manager, I don't know whether my project is, I'm bringing a profit or it's going to, below the profit. So the bottom line of the project is very, very important. And another thing is some of the variations. Not only the project manager has to complete according to the scope. As a project business management, I need to make a more revenue also from the project. For an instance, if the customer is asking more variations, I cannot say, no, the variation cannot be accepted or cannot be encouraged. So I have to bring more variation. So out of that variation, I want to make more money for that. So again, I can create a sub project. Again, I can do a costing. I want to bring more money. Let us say my project value is $500,000 US. Some of the variations, keep on the customer is adding the scope again and again. So again, at that scope, I have to, maintain as a separate revenue. So I want to bring a more revenue to the company. Then only the company has to grow, the employee has to grow, and we can make a profit. So this is my opinion.
Sandhil, totally right. You're spot on with what you're saying. Looking back at the last 1.5 hours that we had, and it seems like we always have this much interest, just like in our conversation with Sunil on Friday. It always seems to run beyond the hour that we envision. But if I try to distill what we talked about today, it really comes down to a lot of things being on the basis of creating business acumen, understanding business cases for projects, understanding what P&L even means. Sometimes that is something that project managers don't even ever come into contact with. So yes, we have to really address that side that we add to the knowledge that we assume project managers for internal projects have. In addition to that, obviously, what we started out with, make or buy decisions that basically develop into contracts. Those are probably two very strong things that need to be provided for project managers engaging in cross-corporate projects. So this is certainly, those are just two of the aspects that we need to address, but they are probably among the most important ones because they keep coming up in the conversation that we've had today. I very much encourage you to stay in contact if you have ideas that might help us to build the resources that we all need to develop the knowledge and the skills. Please do let us know. The conversation doesn't end here with the end of this session. So stay in contact, communicate with us, help us build the resources and the tools that help us all build knowledge and skills for new project managers in project business management, as well as go ever more deep into the topics for those already active in the field. So that is definitely my call to action to the community. And
absolutely,
I thank you all very much for being here again. And we will look to setting up the next open hour very soon. And we will most likely do it again with a poll. Obviously, the last poll that we had online with LinkedIn created a lot of buzz. And we already have a few good ideas, but we'll definitely build this community-based and are very much looking forward to your feedback whenever we set this up anew.